All right, today we're going to dive into Nick Trenton's book, Anxiety is the Enemy, and build a really practical toolkit for you. Our goal here? It's simple. We want to change how you see and handle anxiety by giving you real, actionable techniques to find your calm again. So let's get right into it.
Wow. If you've ever felt this way, you know exactly how intense it is. This quote just perfectly captures that chaotic, powerless feeling of being stuck in an anxiety spiral. It really does feel like a flood, and in that moment, it seems like there's absolutely no high ground in sight. So, the big question is, how do we get from that feeling of being completely overwhelmed to a place of control? While anxiety can feel like an enemy, what we're going to do here is transform your relationship with it. This isn't about fighting a war. It's about skillfully navigating a path from all that chaos to a real sense of calm. And the good news is, there's a pretty clear map for that path. We're going to walk through a simple three-phase toolkit. First, we're going to learn to see our anxiety. Second, we'll learn how to challenge our thoughts. And third, we'll reclaim our calm with some amazing in-the-moment techniques. Think of this as your own personal masterclass. Okay, let's jump into our first phase. See your anxiety. Look, before you can change anything, you have to be able to see it clearly. This step is all about learning to just observe what you're feeling instead of letting it completely swallow you whole. So a core concept here is something called affect labeling. And neuroscientist Dan Siegel put it perfectly. You have to name it to tame it. It sounds so simple, but the act of just putting a name to an emotion, literally just saying, this is anxiety, it actually decreases activity in the brain's emotional centers. It creates this tiny bit of space, which gives your rational brain a chance to finally step in. So how do you actually do this when you're feeling it? First, just notice the physical feeling. That lump in your throat or the tightness in your chest. Then just pause. Take a slow breath. Find the word for it and say to yourself, this is anxiety, or, okay, worry is present. And finally, try visualizing that word as something separate from you. This creates what psychologists call psychological distance. It's a reminder you are not the anxiety, you are the one observing it. Now, to really sharpen this skill of awareness, a thought diary is an incredibly powerful tool. But listen, it's not about endlessly second-guessing yourself. Think of it more like a fact-finding mission. You get to see your self-talk written down on paper. You can track your feelings, and this is crucial. You focus on what you're feeling, instead of getting lost in that endless, unanswerable spiral of why. It's also a great way to spot your triggers and actually see your progress over time. So once we can actually see our anxiety, the very next step is to challenge it. Let's move to step 2, challenge your thoughts. This is where we learn to put our rational mind to work, to question those anxious thoughts that are just fueling the emotional fire. And this just brilliantly illustrates the shift we need to make. Our anxious mind loves to ask these vague, huge questions like, what if everything goes wrong, that just send us spinning? A Socratic question, on the other hand, is like a precision tool. It demands proof. It asks, okay, what evidence do I actually have for this thought? See the difference? One fuels panic, the other fuels clarity. This whole process lets you become your own thought detective. You're basically putting your anxious thought on trial. So, first, you state the thought clearly. Then, you ask for the evidence. You actually search for facts that contradict it. And finally, you rewrite that thought into something more balanced and true. You're not trying to pretend everything is perfect. You're just aiming for accuracy. Another fantastic framework for this is the ABC model. It shows us that it's almost never the adversity, the event itself, that causes our stress. It's our beliefs, our interpretation of the event, that lead to the consequences, which is our emotional response. And this is so empowering because while you can't always control the event, you can absolutely learn to challenge your beliefs about it. Okay, so we've learned to see our anxiety and challenge our thoughts. Now for step 3, reclaim your calm. This is our toolkit for the heat of the moment. These are practical, physical, and mental techniques to stop an anxiety spiral right in its tracks and pull you back into the present. Let's start with one of the most powerful and simple tools we have, our own breath, specifically belly breathing. See, when we're anxious, our breathing gets all shallow and stuck up in our chest. This technique forces a full oxygen exchange, which physically slows your heartbeat, lowers your blood pressure, and sends a signal to your entire nervous system that it's safe to relax. Now, if your thoughts are just racing and you need an emergency stop, this is it. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique is a brilliant way to yank your focus out of your head and back into the physical world. By methodically going through all 5 of your senses, you literally interrupt that anxious thought loop and anchor yourself firmly in the here and now. Your body can only be in the present, and this is how you bring your mind right back to it. I just love this quote from Irma Bombeck. It perfectly captures how useless chronic worry really is. I mean, it feels productive, right? But it achieves absolutely nothing. And this sets us up perfectly for our next, kind of counterintuitive technique for taking back control from that rocking chair of worry. So what if, instead of letting worry hijack your entire day, you just put it on a schedule? That's the absolute genius of worry time. When a worry pops up, you acknowledge it, you write it down, and you promise to give it your full undivided attention later, during your scheduled 20 minutes. This teaches your brain that you are in charge of your thoughts, not the other way around. It completely breaks the cycle of constant, unproductive rumination. So, let's bring all of this together. We've definitely covered a lot of ground, but these aren't just a bunch of random tips. I want you to think of them as individual tools that you can now use to build your own customized anxiety management toolkit, one that really empowers you to navigate life with a lot more resilience. Your core strategy, the foundation of this whole toolkit, really boils down to these 3 powerful actions. First, you see. You become aware of your emotions just by naming them. Then you challenge. You act like a detective and question those anxious thoughts, demanding evidence. And finally, you reclaim. You use your body's own systems through breathing and grounding to get back to a state of calm. And this, right here, is the ultimate reframe. Anxiety isn't some enemy that you have to defeat in battle. It's a signal. It's a messenger. And by learning to listen to it, understand it, and respond with the skills we've talked about today, you can move from a state of constant conflict to a state of calm competence. So that brings us to the final and honestly the most important question. Looking at this powerful toolkit we've built, from labeling your emotions to challenging your thoughts to grounding yourself in the present moment, which one of these tools really resonates with you? Which one are you going to commit to trying first?